Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth, Lies, and the Amazing Benefits of Martial Arts. Today we are let's see, what are we? Woodstock? What is this, Atlanta? This is Woodstock. We are in Woodstock, Georgia, and today we are speaking with Alan Baker, the owner of Atlanta Martial Arts Center. Alan, thank you for talking with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And so we've got a lot to talk about, and hopefully we can cover everything. And but the first thing we'll do is we'll do a short introduction and basically tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you got started in martial arts. What inspired you?
Well, my name's Alan Baker.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Tennessee. Came down to Georgia around '94. My my origin story is a little different than most of them. I was a very rowdy kid, ADHD. Drove my mom crazy. She still talks about it with tears in her eyes. Drove the school system crazy to the point where they wanted to drug me. But yep, mom said, we're not going to do that. And in an attempt to get me under control, sought out martial arts. And so took me to my first martial arts academy just a little prior to my 11th birthday. And got in trouble quite a bit when I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
So I get to go to this place. We go in and I meet the guy that's running this thing, and he tells me that I can get in a fight in his school, and that's okay. It's okay to come here and do this.
Cool.
So I fell in love with it immediately. And he had two sons who had obviously trained their whole lives because that's what he did for a living.
Right.
And to this day, it's one of the life memories of those guys just beating me to death, man. And I loved it. I was motivated by it. I wanted to go back the next night and do it again.
Wow.
And that's all she wrote. I've been passionate about it ever since. Sought out any source of information I could. At one point, I was a member of every martial arts school in that little town.
Wow.
And then, when I was 14, 15, at that time, you could get work and make money in the neighborhood and that type of thing. And,
right.
as soon as I could start making money, I was joining the other schools. I got to the point where I could start making a little more. I was joining schools in the next town over. I was eat up by it. It was covered up with passion for the whole thing.
So you were definitely very involved in a sort of a cross-training manner.
Yes.
You were very passionate about, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to see what this is and what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't just stuck on, one thing or one art system or style at the earliest stages.
No. I knew everybody in that town. Within 2 years, I knew the teachers in Chattanooga and northern Tennessee. One of my motivations to get transportation was so that I could drive up to a town that was about 3 or 4 hours north of me and train there, at least once every couple of weeks.
So how did you find these schools without the internet?
Yeah, how did you find them? Because this was definitely obviously before.
Word of mouth, and maybe the universe kind of guided it to me.
Okay.
The more the network grew, and I talked to people, and they would go, "Man, you should look at this. You should check that out." And some people kind of ignore that. I'm not that type of person. Yeah. I would go check it out. I would get on the phone, and go see them. Bug them. I had memberships at schools where I'd clean the school to train. And then the ones that were from other towns, I had a good friend who moved into my town, and he had trained at this kung fu school in northern Tennessee. And he worked at a records and tape store. And, I walked in, I met him, and he had wrestling shoes on, and I was like, "Oh, you're a wrestler?" He's like, "No." And then right away, I'm like, "So you're a fighter? We should get together." And he kicked my butt. So I get my ass kicked a lot. In my
Makes
teens.
you learn, definitely.
And we became best friends. And
Cool.
He's the one that turned me on to the Kung Fu school, so we started making plans to go back and visit that school.
Wow.
As regular as we could. It's pretty much all we did was eat, work, and train.
Right. And so what was your favorite Did you have any favorites back then, like favorite things that you practiced or did?
At that time, Kung Fu.
Okay. And what was it? A certain style?
It was like a Shaolin mix.
Yeah.
Northern, Southern Shaolin, and some Shaolin Kempo. That teacher had some experience in multiple different martial arts. He was ex-military and had the opportunity to travel the world.
Oh, that's cool.
And train with all these guys, and he came back and turned it into his passion.
Wow.
That and Burmese Bondo. I was fortunate enough to...
Very rare.
Yep. There were 3 instructors of Burmese Bondo in my town, and I knew all of them.
Can you tell the audience a little bit more about Burmese Bondo for those who are just not familiar with
if
it?
you are familiar with Muay Thai,
Okay.
it is very similar. The one main difference that most people will tout is that Bondo will use headbutts.
Oh, okay.
Thai boxing doesn't so much, but other than that, fairly similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there, what did you end up moving on to after that?
Well, I came to like a little crossroads moment,
Okay.
and ended up moving to Chattanooga because of an opportunity to teach.
Right.
Well, I didn't really look at it as a job. It was an opportunity to train all day long.
So you wanted to teach pretty early on in the
Yeah,
in
I
the
knew I was
process.
going to do this from the get-go.
Gotcha.
And everybody thought I was nuts, especially my parents. So, you're never going to make anything out of that. And
Yeah, I've heard it all, man.
yeah. So, but the opportunity came, and at the time, I had one of the best jobs in that little town. People, they thought I was crazy. I quit that job and went working for peanuts, teaching martial arts in Chattanooga, and that I got introduced to other systems of Kung Fu, Filipino Kali, Judo. I used to train at a judo school there, and I taught at the place I worked for until like 9 p.m. and classes were over at the judo school. So by the time I close and get over there, they're just doing randori. So I signed up and said, well, I'll just come for randori.
And what Alan is talking about, everyone, randori is a play. It's it's a time where judo players get together and basically spar, if that's a better way or another way to put it.
Yeah, they hit you with the planet. They're
Yeah.
going to pick you up and throw you on the ground. And since I didn't go to a formal class, that's all I got for years. Until the guys started feeling sorry for me because I just got my butt kicked all the time, and then they started showing me a few things.
I see.
So I really didn't progress in any rank
Okay.
for years. I just trained.
Right.
Then when I came to Atlanta, I met Bob Bird. He's a 7th or 8th degree in judo,
Right.
and started doing private lessons with him.
Okay.
And that's when I started pursuing rank, officially in judo.
So the whole idea of rank and titles really didn't start to become important to you until quite a ways away after the beginning. Because for you, it was just, I want to train. I want to get out there and I want to see what's out there and get involved and just do this thing called martial arts. And so the title or rank thing didn't really start to seep in until a little later.
Yes.
And so you've had a lot of experience in your early life, whereas a lot of people, they don't. They find, one school, maybe 2, and they kind of stick with it. Can you tell people about what that experience was like, having, the opportunity to train in so many different things with so many different people? What was that like?
Well, it was normal for me. I didn't realize till later in life that how I grew up was unusual.
Yes. And that's actually why I bring that up, because it is.
Yeah, now I look around at most people's journeys and they go, wow, I had an unusual,
Yeah.
And that's just the martial arts side of it.
Do you ever look back and just feel so lucky and just feel so fortunate that you had such a
Yes.
that,
we're just talking about one side of the house. The gentleman that was in northern Tennessee, he also owned an expeditions company.
Okay.
So we would go up and train on Thursday night, and I'd stay the weekend, and I'd help him run his expeditions. So
Wow.
as a teen, we were rappelling, climbing, we were scuba diving. I got introduced to all that
Renaissance man.
stuff. And it's a part of me that most people really don't know. I'm a rappel master instructor,
Okay.
diving instructor. It's just I'm not known for it.
I
you
see.
know? So,
Right.
but the martial arts side, the expedition side of the house is, I look back now and go, wow, I was lucky.
Yeah.
Right place, right time with the right guy. And,
Right. But you're also very driven too.
Yes.
So there's that side of the coin where there's got the luck side, but you were very adamant about pursuing these things.
I had passion for it from the very beginning.
Yeah. And then, so when you look back and you have that retrospect, I can't imagine that you would have any regrets or any kind of thing you wish you would have done, because it sounds like you've done quite a bit. But looking back, is there anything where you're like, I wish I would have done this art or that art, but I never got the chance? Or do you feel pretty fulfilled?
I still have things that I'm getting into and training to this day. I once I kind of started getting a big picture of combat and realized that there are areas that are lacking.
Okay.
And go, well, how do I fill that area in the combat blueprint?
Right.
Then I go seek information.
Okay.
And there's no single source of information. So you end up having to cook your own soup.
Okay,
after
that's a good way to
certain
put it.
amount of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Would you say that it's, at least on some level, very important for your beginning martial artists, like your first year people, or people who are just getting started on day one? Would you feel that it's, in your opinion, important or not important, that for their development, they try to branch out, they try to, from the beginning, get out there and experience as many different things as you can for your development, rather than going to one school, one style, one system? Do you have benefits, pros and cons with that, or is it like, because I know it's up for debate all the time with that.
It'll vary according to the individual.
Okay.
What are you looking for?
Okay.
What are you passionate about?
Right.
Some people just, they're looking for something in case they have an episode on the street.
Right.
And I want to come out of it alive. Me and my family. Others want to pursue more depth. So it kind of depends on the individual.
Right.
The big thing is violence is a tool.
Right.
It's probably not the most positive discussion in these days, but
Yeah.
it is a tool.
Yeah.
And it is a necessary tool. And I think it is a life skill to have an understanding of that tool, the full spectrum of violence.
Right.
But you have to have a code of how you apply it. The bad guy doesn't have a code.
Right.
He doesn't have a methodology he follows, that the gentleman's code and just do the right thing. But a warrior and a martial artist, those two different things, they generally will have some sort of code.
Okay.
And based on that, then studying to use the tool of violence is okay. It's necessary sometimes. And
Right.
you don't want to get in a situation where you realize the necessity of it and you don't have it, or you don't have the full spectrum of it.
I see.
Yeah, so it's a necessary thing.
Right.
So finding a source to give you those answers, to give you those skills,
Right.
is an important thing. And especially in today's world, things aren't necessarily on the upswing. You're
Right.
seeing more violence in the world, unfortunately.
Right.
So in my experience, more and more people are looking for those answers and good sources of those answers.
I would definitely agree with that, especially in our travels, because we've been traveling since the very beginning of COVID, and even before that, and then even until today, here sitting with you. And there's definitely there is a lot more interest in people getting involved in solutions for violence, we'll say. Obviously martial arts is one of them. But in our travels, we haven't seen a lot of, I don't know how to put this, but we've seen a lot of schools. We've seen a lot of different types of schools, everything from your traditional to your tactical to your, standard self-defense stuff and all that. But what we've been seeing so far is that it's a lot of the same stuff with a lot of the same approach, whether you're teaching a self-defense system or you're teaching traditional martial arts or whatever. What I'm trying to say is that the times have changed, but the schools haven't, if that makes sense, or the teaching hasn't. So there hasn't, now I can't say that for all schools, because we've met individuals like you and your school that they've kept up, they've tried to stay congruent with the way that violence is today, whereas a lot of other schools don't. So do you have any comments as to, as to any of that, as far as schools keeping up with the times and saying, sure, if you're going to teach traditional martial arts, you should try to stay educated as much as you can on on changing times. Anything with that? It was kind of a long-winded question, but I tried to get it out.
For me, outside of martial arts, you have a blueprint of combat.
Okay.
And in that blueprint, there are primal environments. And a primal environment is something that happens whether you're trained or untrained.
Right.
An example of that is striking. An untrained person will close his fist and swing at you. It might not look pretty,
Yeah.
where a trained guy might look better.
Right.
And pummeling is that environment. They'll grab onto you. It's, for instance, in boxing, you're not supposed to clinch, but they still clinch because it's human nature. It's what human beings do under stress in combat. Grappling's one. Edge and blunt weaponry is one. Okay. I can pick up a knife, I can have it, pick a glass up in the parking lot, pencil, anything that's sharp under pressure. A human being doesn't have to be trained to see that and go, that will save me, I'll grab it and stick it into this guy and survive.
Right.
And projectile weaponry. It is a primal environment. People will use firearms with no training whatsoever. They can figure it out. If they've watched enough movies, they'll figure it out and do it. Now, they might not be as good as the guy trained, but due to that is a primal environment. So you want to have answers in each one of those primal environments.
Okay.
Now, there's some systems that are gap arts. They're between those primal environments.
Interesting.
And so what that will be is something that isn't necessarily human nature to do.
Right.
Like if I put someone untrained under pressure, they're going to do certain things. Those are my primals. But there's some things that are taught that they'll never do unless they're taught to do it.
I see.
And why we want to know that is because as the stress levels increase in the situation, those are the first things that deteriorate.
Right.
You go back to the baseline of your nervous system. And sometimes it's what's ingrained. You get punched in the head by 4 guys, your hands are going to start coming up.
Right.
I don't have to tell you that. But I can train you to do it better.
Right.
So if we are aware of the combat blueprint, we can look at it and go, do I have a basic education in each one of these?
Okay.
And so that goes to another principle I follow, which is called system as a source. And that says 2 things. One, the first part is don't become systemized.
I'm really glad you said that.
And a lot of people, they'll go to a school and you do what the teacher tells you.
Yeah.
You join the culture.
Right.
And you'll become kind of systemized by the system. You won't realize it.
Right.
But that's one of the reasons to point it out is so you go in and go, well, I want to avoid this.
Yeah.
But we also say system as a source because where do you get your information?
Right. It's almost like a double-edged sword. You got to get it from somewhere.
Right.
So
you have to intelligently pick out where you're going to go and get your sources of information to plug that into your combat blueprint.
Okay.
And then, we avoid systemization in the beginning as warriors.
Yeah.
Right. But eventually, I am going to figure out what works for me, my build, my height, the environment I operate in, the laws I have to follow in the area that I live,
Right.
how I walk down the sidewalk with my family, what places do I go, what car do I drive,
Right.
all of that matters.
Okay.
So I'll start to develop things that work for me in my culture and my environment, and then that I want to systemize because there's power in systemization. But not if I'm just learning someone else's system. They designed it for a certain reason.
Right.
And so I kind of use these filters to help people change the way they think about martial arts. And it's not always the best for martial arts instructors. Right. So for all of you guys out there, I apologize if I'm affecting your business. But,
right, yeah. No, I appreciate that because that you're already kind of answering some questions that I had. And one of the things I bring up with both my interviewees and everyone in general, really, is that when you look at martial arts from a traditional standpoint, you can tell that a lot of these systems, arts, and styles were developed or devised during a time when we knew much less about the human body and mind. And today we know a lot more, physiologically, from a neurology standpoint, and things like that. So those systems, if they're still doing what they've been doing for the last 100, 200 years, it would seem to me that they would have a much harder time lending themselves to a more modern self-defense approach, because they're just not, they don't want to change because they don't want to mess with the tradition, basically. They don't want to improve. And I can't say that about all systems and everyone and all that, right? But now that I have been across the country in over 40 states and we've seen hundreds of schools, there's things that I can say now. I can say from an unbiased, objective standpoint that there's a lot of schools that are still very far behind in that way. Not against them, not saying that they shouldn't be, but just saying that, well, if you're going to advertise and market that you're teaching self-defense, then why don't you know as much as you should know about violence? And that's my point, is that they'll advertise and market that they're teaching A, but they're not very well versed in the field of that. Meaning, if you're teaching a women's self-defense class, and it's a jiu-jitsu school, right? Most of the time that we've seen, the instructors are not very well educated in the field of violence, but they're educated in their art. Mm-hmm. But when they actually have to teach and they have to convey the information and knowledge over to the women in this case, they don't seem to have as much knowledge as, say, someone like yourself or me or other people in the field of violence separately. Do you feel that it's necessary to have that knowledge, or no? Yes, I know it's always up for debate, but what do you think about that?
As far as an instructor,
yes,
yeah, it depends on what that instructor wants to do.
Okay.
Some guys, they want to get into the culture on the school.
Yeah, right.
It's a great lifestyle. And you can learn a certain level of information and achieve that, and deliver a service.
Right.
That's it is what it is. Here's what I have, and
right.
and that's great. It takes a unique personality to reach that level of achievement, right, and not rest, and not stop, and continue to dig and research and right, put time, effort in it. Because it's not really necessary anymore. You've built what you want. So I think there's very few of those personalities out right, there that okay, continue the search. To me, that's the difference between a martial artist and a warrior. Right. A warrior, due to their code and their belief systems, they never stop digging and searching. Okay. It's always there. Yeah. They never stop looking into the unknown. They never start challenging themselves, simplifying what they do, taking a 1,000-mile view on a regular basis, right, and going, what I'm doing working? Yeah. Am I up to current times? Right. And if I'm not, I'm like, how do I fix it? And then there's the crossroads. I'm not going to worry about it. I've got this. Yeah. Or do you call that guy up and go, hey, I'm going to come see you. You've right, got something that's unique, and I don't. Teach me. Right. So going back to the original statement, it takes a special personality. Okay. To get there. Yeah, I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. So let's talk about. So you've been through this very long journey of martial arts, right? And self-defense, and you're also involved in the tactical world. You work with a lot of law enforcement, executive security. I know you've probably worked with a lot of military. So you're involved in those sectors as well. Can you talk a little bit more about how your school fits into that, or how how you and your school fits into those departments, and not just your regular everyday? Well, I would say it's more me than this academy. Okay. This academy has a schedule of things that it delivers. Okay. The things I do for instance, the Executive Protection Institute, Vehicle Dynamics Institute. Yep. We start with what the problem was in those industries. Okay. So, they don't have the information we have. Right. They haven't done what we've done. So right. They come to our industry and go, look, we need defensive tactics. Right. What do you got? So the Thai boxer will come and show Thai boxing. And so the guys learn it, and it's great. But after about 2 or 3 months of doing it in full kit with weaponry on, in and out of vehicles, and I have to follow the laws, plus there's certain things my boss wants me to say when I get into an exchange, It just doesn't work that well. And I've also realized that the culture is starting to change to the point where even though I am legally in the right to do this, I still have to take into consideration how it looks visually.
Right.
I also, it has to be socially acceptable.
Right.
All of those things affect it. And so if I get out of my car and I start like a Thai boxer and I Thai kick you in the leg and somebody records it, I'm in trouble.
It's a different world.
Yeah, so with that in consideration, well, this is not going to work for us. Let's go try the next guy.
Right.
So now we will call the jiu-jitsu guy in, and he teaches jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I go through the same process, and 6 months later, I'm having a new defensive tactics guy come in because it didn't quite fit my environment.
Right.
So when EPI, BDI, and a lot of the different clients we have got in touch with us, we go and learn their environment first.
Okay.
What do you wear? What do you drive? Where do you go? What are the laws you follow? The works. Show me first. Right. And then we will design the defensive tactics program around that environment from the ground up. So I'm not telling you to do what I do. I build it to fit what you do.
I see. So it's very customized.
Right. So with that, it's the programs that were developed through AMAC Tactical are totally different than what is taught on the mat here.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. And because you see a lot of this, you and I both, everybody that we know at least, we see a lot of these different camps or categories or whatever. You've got martial arts, self-defense, and then you've got the tactical community that is more law enforcement, military, and whatever. Can you talk about specifically the carryover value from martial arts and over to those other areas? Meaning, you learn and train martial arts, and there's going to be some carryover or overlap value to the self-defense realm, and then there's going to be overlapping value to the tactical realm. And how would one go about that? And then my other question is this one might be the first one. Is there a difference between martial arts and self-defense, in your opinion? And if so, what is it?
Oh, wow. Well, it goes back to system as a source.
Okay.
Where do you go to get the information? And, you have to take the information and be able to process it and cook the soup for the environment you're going into.
Gotcha.
So
it's really based on conditions, like heavily based on what?
Yes, in my experience in those industries,
Yeah.
it definitely is.
Okay.
So, it's not that, well, this doesn't work over here, but there are parts that will.
I see.
Or there might be one half of one part.
Yeah.
Like, say, for instance, as an example, there's a technique. You learn it from the system. Well, the first half of the technique might work. Second half can't.
Right.
So I've got to be able to mentally let go of that.
Okay.
And create something that will. And you have to have a background in different systems that can relate to those combat blueprints.
Gotcha.
So
that brings me to another question. Do you feel that there are certain system styles or arts that lend themselves a little bit more or a lot more to the self-defense and tactical realm, and arts that don't?
I would say, to sound like a broken record, if I go back to the combat blueprint, I use that outline a lot.
Yep. I like it.
In each primal environment, you're going to have environments of exchange, resistance. We're going to spar, we're going to fight, we're going to test. And then we're going to add stress to those environments.
Okay.
I'm going to add stress physically.
Right.
I'm going to add it emotionally, depending on the student, and if he can handle it. I'm going to add it mentally. So when we have that, some systems operate better in those conditions.
Right.
So I could say, hey, jiu-jitsu, they test it out. They come in 3 or 4 nights a week. We get on the mat, slap, tap, and we roll. And let's see what happens.
Right.
Thai boxing, they, get in the ring, salute, and we bang.
Right.
We test it out and see what happens on a regular basis, consistently over time. You should have an environment like that for stick and knife fighting.
Okay.
That you can do regularly over time without breaking your body down. You should have an environment that you can play in with projectile weaponry. So you can go and test. If I'm running around the car at this angle, do I get shot or do I shoot them first?
Very true.
Where do you go to find that? So there's certain truths that are going to come out of that wisdom-seeking method.
Gotcha.
because it's just truth.
Right.
And so it just happened to me. I learned this technique, and my teacher said it was the best. But when I do, I keep getting caught when I do it.
Right.
But nope, it's the best because my teacher said it's the best. No.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
The wisdom environment is giving you information. Accept it.
Yep.
You have to see the truth and take it. Now, it might be different for the guy on this side of the mat. Your truth over here.
Right.
Because you're built differently. You have different talents. You have
Yep.
a different experience.
Very subjective then. Very.
Yes, but the thing is, you have to have an environment where you can find truth.
Okay.
So, if we can pick out those systems,
Yep.
maybe we don't want to name them, but
Sure.
go and try it.
Yeah.
And so, the systems that have those environments, to me, are the closest. If I had to just pick a martial art
Right.
that you could go and get information.
Okay.
And you see a lot of law enforcement officers now going into jiu-jitsu. And it's perfect. It's not a technique that I teach you and you just believe me that it'll work. And then if I have to apply it, let's see if it did. No, you can get on the mat and test it and find out and gain confidence in it. And, of course, at some point you have to say, well, I'm going to have on gear, kit, firearms.
Right.
I'm going to be wearing a certain set of shoes, getting in and out of a patrol car.
Right.
So I have to take that into consideration and how that fits into this environment. And that's kind of a gap that's not bridged, but it could be.
It could be. It definitely could be.
Right.
You're right. I don't see it bridged as much as it could be, and I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for that. But what we'll do is we'll stop it here and we'll go on in the next segment. We'll just talk about, because you right there at the end you were talking about the truths and trying to seek more truth in both martial arts and combat. So let's go on to that. So stay tuned, everyone. We're going to come back with Alan Baker and talk about the truths about martial arts.